everyone, I'm Pion and welcome to Neon Noodles. What is Neon Noodles, you ask? I like to call it an engineering puzzle game about robots making sushi. It's gonna enter early access on the 29th of November, and this is what it looks like. So in this level we have to create boiled rice, 5 portions of boiled rice, that's the goal. And here's the recipe for boiled rice, which is unboiled rice, put it on a boiling station, wait for 1 cycle, and then you get boiled rice. So let's try doing that. In order to do so, we're gonna place some things on the game board here. We're gonna start with the rice producer. And then we put a boiling station over here and a boiled rice consumer. And now we need a chef, and the chef will be this robot over here. And we're gonna face the robot this direction. And now we're gonna have to program the robot to tell him how to cook the rice, or boil the rice. So I'm gonna edit the robot's program. And you edit the program by just, moving him around basically. So you just press the buttons he's supposed to do, and he's gonna do that. And he's all at the same time recording the program down here in the bottom line of the screen. We're gonna delete all that though, because we don't actually have to move for this level. In order to activate the stations and the consumer and the producer, you just bump into them. So first we have to pick up the unboiled rice. We do so by bumping in the producer, which we do by pressing A, obviously. So I'm pressing A, and you see the robot is picking up the rice. Then we're gonna turn down to the boiling station, bump into the boiling station to put the rice in there, skip the tutorial messages, and then we have to wait for 1 cycle, because this means it has to cook for 1 cycle, basically. So we're pressing Q to insert a wait instruction, which will show up down here, and then we pick up the rice again, and then we turn our face the boiled rice consumer and put the rice in there, and then we press E for resetting the robot to its starting position, and then the program is done. So that's a program. I'm going to execute it, and you can see how the robot operates the boiling station and cooks some sushi for us, or boiled rice rather. It's not really sushi yet, I guess. Let's jump to a more complex level. So this is level 6. And in this level, we have to create a nigiri, it's called, I think. I'm not a sushi eater. Also, those symbols are stylized as frick, so I'm not sure what all of this is. And there are no tooltips, unfortunately. There should be tooltips for that kind of stuff. But we have to create 5 portions of nigiri. And to do that, you need a little bit more complex recipe. As you can see over here, you need boiled rice and sliced fish, and you have to put them together on a rolling station and roll them to create nigiri. And you see a new symbol over here. This is the interact or action symbol, I call it, as opposed to the waiting symbol, where you just have to wait for 1 cycle. Here the robot actually has to interact with the station, so he's busy, but you have to press the button. So you can see down here, robot 3 is gonna put the boiled rice first, I think, or actually it might be the sliced fish on the rolling station. Then it's taking the boiled rice and puts it on the rolling station. Then he's gonna interact with the rolling station once instead of waiting, picking up the product, the result, and putting it in the consumer. So this is how a little bit more complex level looks like with multiple robots. When we execute it, you can see that the robots interact with each other quite nicely and produce the desired result. There we go, and we get some histograms, which we're going to talk about in a second. And I pressed the wrong button. I wanted to actually stay in that level. So you could see that the robot number 2, I'm going to execute it again, is actually spinning around a little crazy and is not quite sure what to do with the fish. And that's because his program is way shorter than the program of the other 2 robots, as you can see here. And that means he loops faster. And that's something you have to keep in mind. The robots will not sync automatically. If you want to sync them, you have to use wait instructions, as I did with robot 1, so they don't get out of sync and don't do silly things. But in this case, for robot 2, it's fine, because he's just trying to put the fish on the slicing station and is failing to do so because there is a fish on the station already. So he just repeats what he does by turning back and trying to do it again, and it will put fish on the station eventually. So, while we're talking about loops, let's actually go to level 8 and show you another mechanic which is introduced in this level. So let's actually add another robot and give him a program, and we're gonna let him wait a little bit, and then we're gonna make him move around to the dupe. So, okay, if we execute the program now, you will see that the robot is looping over all of these instructions, as you can see here, but we can change that by introducing the loop start pointer, or whatever it's called. I'm not sure, is that the name? Change loop start. It's a loop start. So we change the loop start by moving this little thing around. You can see it moving around here. And what this means is that everything which is left to the loop start is not actually part of the loop, and it's just like the setup phase, and then the loop starts. So if you activate now, you will see that he will only loop this part. instead of all of that, which helps, well, setting up the robots so you can sync them properly. So you want to get them in a setup state, basically, or in a starting state, and then you want to loop them infinitely. So that's another mechanic. Also, you can link robots, so I can tell this robot to execute whatever robot 1 is doing instead of having his own program. You can actually, I'm not sure, that it didn't remove the loop start. Well, is that actually ignoring the loop start? No, it's not. Interesting. Okay, I think I found a bug. You're not supposed to do that, I believe. That would be pretty silly. Let's actually kill the link really quick and get rid of the loop start. There we go. And let's now do that again. So now the robot will do whatever robot 1 is doing. And the benefit of that is that it costs you less program size. So there are multiple metrics. Well, I'll actually talk about the histograms really quick. There are multiple metrics: cycles, program size, and bot area. And program size is how many symbols you use to program your robots. And you can see the sum of the symbols over here, so 10 per robot in this case. But you will notice that my program size score is 45 instead of 50, and that is because linked robots will only account for half the cost. So even though this robot has 10 symbols, because he's copying robot 1, he only counts for, or only 5 of those symbols actually count towards the score. So that's program size. The other two metrics are cycles, which is, well, how long it took to create the 5 products, and bot area, which is how much space you use. I think it's similar to Footprint in Infinifactory, if you know that game. In general, you might have noticed this game is similar to Zachtronics titles, and the developer themselves actually call it a Zach-like, which is, at least gameplay-wise, true. It's an open-ended engineering puzzle game with different optimization metrics, and it even has exactly 3 as most Zachtronics game, and also has histograms as most Zachtronics games. So optimizing for cycles is actually fairly interesting in this game. The reason for that is that you don't have a clear path to do so. If I compare it to Zachtronics games, when we're speaking about it, if I compare it to Zachtronics games, in those games, I like optimizing for cycles, so I have a decent experience with it. And you usually have, like, when you look at the level, you have an idea on how the optimal cycle solution will look like. Or it's not too hard to figure out an idea. Sometimes there are some tricks to cut off or shave off a cycle here or there, but you have in general structure, and you're pretty certain, okay, this is probably the optimal way to get to the perfect cycle score. Executing or getting the details done, that's the hard part, but the structure is usually fairly obvious. In this game, not so much. Like, there's so many ways to do this. Oh yeah, I actually forgot an important part when we're talking, an important gameplay mechanic, when we're talking about optimization. There's a limitation you have to work around. If you take a look at this thing, you see these little numbers, and that means how many of those thingies I have available for this level. So for this level, I have available 2 chicken producers. One is placed already up here, and we have 1 left. So we could down a second, but not a third one. Same goes for the consumer, and we only have all these stations once. But we have infinite amount of tables and infinite amounts of robots. That's very different for every level. Like, in some levels, the consumers are unlimited, or the producers are unlimited, or it's a mix of them. It's very different for every level. I didn't saw limitations on the robots yet, but there might be in later levels. Who knows? But in these levels, in the levels so far I've played, there are limitations only in those, but it heavily changes how you optimize, at least for cycles. For program size and bot area, I imagine you go for very few stations and consumers and producers anyway, but for cycles you obviously want to use as many as possible, because it, in theory at least, allows you to go faster. But again, as I said, it's not very obvious how to do that. There are actually a lot of different approaches you could do that, especially if you're very limited. Like, in some levels, you only have 1 consumer of every resource you have, but you have multiple, 1 producer, but you have multiple consumers for the end product. And that means, how do you do that? Like, do you put the producers in the center and put robots around them, and like put the consumers on the outside of the level and try to get it done that way? Do you try to move the robots around? Do you have the robot stationary? Like, it's not easy. Like, there are a lot of different ways of doing it, and I didn't figure out like a good I don't know, I didn't got a good grip on how to optimize this game for cycles yet. But that's not a negative, that's actually a positive. I enjoy figuring out that kind of stuff. So I fiddled around with optimizing for cycles in this game quite a bit, and it's very challenging, but very interesting and very different to most Electronics games in that regard for some reason, or for the reasons I just laid out. Okay, there's one more gameplay mechanic I want to show you. If we jump to level 9, I believe, it introduces a new robot. So far, the robots could turn around and move forward and backward in the direction they're facing. The railbot, on the other hand, works completely different. The railbot cannot rotate, but he can sidestep, so he can move back and forth like the regular robot, but he can sidestep instead of rotating, which obviously completely changes how he operates, especially when you're actually moving. And in this level, you certainly have to move, or you will not get things done. Like the other robots, you just put them in the middle of the stations, and you rotate them around to face the different stations. And if you don't need too many stations per robot, then that's fine. But this robot can't do that, so you have to write completely different programs for these, which completely changes up the game, which is very interesting. And I wonder if the game introduces more mechanics like this later on. It apparently has hundreds of recipes already, I think, according to the store page. I'm only in level 10. I'm not sure if that's hundreds of levels, certainly, but at least a bunch of recipes. You can see that like this actually uses multiple recipes, so I imagine it's not hundreds of levels, but there's a lot of different recipes, certainly. And you can see the recipes are getting a little bit more complex when the game goes on. Like for this, we need 3 different thingies, basically, which we have to produce out of the starting resources and have to put them together in the pen. And then we have to wait for 2 cycles to get it done and stuff like that. So it gets more complicated the further you get, obviously. And yeah, so gameplay-wise, the game is very, very interesting. I find it's challenging, it's fun, it's very Tektronix-like, certainly, but it puts its own spin on it, kind of. And that's all very positive. Let's talk about the not so positive things. So the game is in a very difficult state when it comes to UI and technical polish. Also graphical polish. So, or graphics quality, I guess. So let's talk about UI first. So there are no tooltips, which is annoying quite a bit. I would love to have tooltips. The control scheme is not great either. Like there's a lot of different hotkeys. They're not super intuitive. It's certainly a little weird to edit these programs and stuff like that. It's a little strange. It's not, as I said, lots of different hotkeys. It's not perfect. More annoying though is the way this works. If you have multiple robots, it scrolls through the programs, but it doesn't have a scroll wheel or anything, or a scroll bar or anything, or is controlled by the scroll wheel. No, it will automatically scroll to whichever robot you're highlighting. So if I highlight robot 7, it scrolls down, but if I go to 1, it scrolls up. And that's, in my opinion, a bad design decision, especially in some situations. Like, let's say I want to look at robot 7, and then I'm going to take a look at this program, and then all of a sudden it scrolls up because it actually highlights this robot. And in general, it's not, I don't find it an intuitive way for going through that. So I want to look at this and scroll through it, and not like find the right robot and then look at the code. It's just, I don't know, it's a little strange. I don't like it that much. And in general, the UX could lead some improvements. From a technical point of view, this is your main menu. You have a very basic level select up here. You have sound size, which is good, resolution settings, which is good, full screen, which is actually borderless window, which is good, keyboard layout, which is very good, especially if your game relies on hotkeys so much. But in general, there's no main menu. There's no way to select the different or you can select the different levels, but there's no way to look at them in an overview or like compare the different scores, save multiple solutions, stuff like that, stuff like which you would expect from a Tektronix game, for example. This game is certainly not in a state your regular Tektronix game is when they enter early access, which is almost done. This game is certainly not almost done yet. Like there's a bunch of work to do, but the gameplay is there already and it's fun. Talking about almost done and not done yet, I like the background art. It looks decent. I like the highly stylized neon icons for the products and the stations and whatnot. And I really, really don't think the robots mesh well with all of that. The robots are very low budget, probably developer art 3D models. And I'm not sure why they made that choice, or like it's only one person. I'm not sure if it's a man or woman. I assume a man, but that's just because more male developers in the industry. But so it's a one-person team, and that's probably the reason for this. But the robots just don't mesh well with the rest of the art style, in my opinion. As I said, they look very, very low budget because they probably are, and yeah, I don't know. I would prefer them to have a similar style, like the stations, maybe in some sort, like have them like a little Roomba with a symbol on top or something, maybe like with a neon symbol or something along those lines, or a big like a sphere with some symbols on it or something. I don't know. I'm not an art designer, but just make it in the same style as the rest of as the other items in the game, and then you're fine. But I don't know. These look cheap. So yeah, overall, the game is certainly fun and interesting so far, but pretty rough around the edges yet. But the developer plans to have the game in early access for half a year, so there's definitely some time to put the effort in and make it shine. And I think this game is very promising because, as I said, the gameplay is very cool, very interesting, very tech-like, and yeah. The game is called Neon Noodles, as you can see here. The link is in the description below if you want to check it out for yourself. It's going to enter early access on the 29th of November. I'm Pion. Thanks a lot for watching. Have fun and see you next time. If you liked the video, feel free to press the like button. If you didn't like it, press the dislike button, I guess, and give me an engagement or something. And if you want to see more of my stuff, feel free to press the subscribe button. Thank you.